One thing I would say is to think outside the box, not to be afraid to think outside the box. There's lots of traditional teachers and traditional students, and there's room for them. But I also think that there's lots of kids that we will lose.
You're watching Tim Topham TV, the piano teaching podcast. This is episode number 35. Hi everyone, and thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Tim Topham TV. Well, we'll be continuing our discussion all about group teaching with Lynnette Barney from Tucson. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, the fantastic Tracy Selly and Sarah Campbell, who've put together this Group Lessons 101 package that I've been talking about. This is an online training package of webinars and downloads and worksheets and things. It is fantastic and is all about group teaching, group games, group lessons, and things that you can do on summer camps and how to put together summer camp programs. Now, funnily enough, here's a little sneak peek into next month. We're actually going to be focusing on summer camps so that you guys can start preparing, for those of you in America, for the summer camp season. So we'll be starting that in April this year. And for those of you who are on my side of the world, then this will be relevant to you guys for obviously later in the year when it comes summertime. So all of that is still to come, but I did want to talk about this group lessons program from Tracy and Sarah. They've put together this fantastic package of webinars and videos and training for you all about groups. So if the theme of this month, which has all been about group teaching and group ideas, has been of interest and you want some really hands-on step-by-step guidance as to how to approach things, then this package is definitely worth a look at. So I'm really pleased to announce that Tracy and Sarah are giving Tim Topham TV viewers 10% off access, but only if you head to timtopham.com/upbeat. Okay, now before I get into the interview and also introduce Lynnette, I just wanted to give you two quick updates. Firstly, the launch of my inner circle. I've had to delay this a little bit. We've had some technical issues and I want to make sure this is absolutely right before I let all of you guys, whoever's interested in joining from my email list and my podcast viewers, get involved. So stay tuned. I will be looking to launch this. I'm hoping now at the 1st of April or thereabouts. Hopefully it's not an April Fool. It's a very serious event. That's the planned date now. So I've got a couple of weeks to finalize some of these little areas because I really want you guys, when you get involved there, to just be able to get straight into the content and sharing of ideas rather than worry about anything to do technically. So hang in there. I do apologize. I did say it was going to be, I think, last week now. These things are set to try us sometimes, but we are getting there and I can't wait to be able to announce that in a couple of weeks' time. Finally, I did mention in my last couple of episodes that there have been trouble for some people downloading episodes using the iPhone and iPad apps. I can now happily say that has been resolved. So if you did change over to Overcast, the different app that I recommended, you're welcome to stay with that obviously, but if you wanted to change back to iTunes and the iPod player on iPhone, then that should all be working now. Let me know if it doesn't, but I've had a few people test it and it sounds all good. All right, so let me tell you about Lynnette, my guest today. She's been a music educator in Tucson for over 20 years at a private piano studio, Creative Keys. She's a member of the MTNA, ASMTA, and Tucson Music Teachers Association. I do hope I'm saying Tucson right. I'm pretty sure I am. But being an Aussie, who knows? Lynnette began performing with her sisters as a child and has always found her greatest joy in collaborative music. It's interesting when we talk about the whole group teaching experience near the beginning of this episode, the relevance of her upbringing as a musician in a musical family and the group kind of collaborative approach has had a real impact on the way she teaches, and she's going to share all that with you. In addition to teaching musicians young and old, she especially enjoys performing duets and accompanying choirs, soloists, and ballet. Because of Lynnette's love for collaborative music, students in Lynnette's studio have weekly group lessons as well as private lessons. Each week they participate in a fun and interactive environment as they prepare keyboard ensemble music, they improvise, develop rhythm skills, and learn theory concepts. And Lynnette gives us a number of examples of how she actually goes about this, and she has a really cool timetabling tactic, which I've never heard of, and you're going to find out about right in this episode coming up. So I'm not going to say anything further except to introduce my guest today, Lynnette Barney. Well, Lynnette, thank you so much for giving us your time today on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, look, I learnt about you from David Cutler's book, The Savvy Music Teacher, and I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes because I'm going to be talking about it a lot this year. Fantastic book. And you were used as an example of a diverse studio. So we're going to cover a whole lot of different stuff today about, obviously, group teaching, because that's the theme of this month, but also about how you use improvisation and some other things, which I probably don't even know about, but I can't wait to find out about. But look, can you tell us just a little bit about your background and how that's led you perhaps to be such a diverse teacher?
Well, I grew up in a family of 5, and it was expected we would all play the piano, that we would all play a second instrument, and that we would all sing. Okay. And so we did as we were expected to do, to one degree or another, and we sang together, and we played the piano together, and we had a little like modified string orchestra sort of with the 4 of us. And so to me, music has always been about doing stuff together, making music together, singing together, playing piano duets badly or well together. And so as I started teaching, I realized I wanted to bring that magic to my students. I wanted them to be playing in ensembles. I wanted them to be singing. I wanted them to be doing music together because that was the magic for me. And so that's what I focus on in my studio because of that love of collaborative music.
I think it's been, from the other people that I've interviewed, it's certainly been something that if you've grown up with it, so if your teacher did group classes, or if you studied Yamaha group classes, or as you've said, I haven't heard your story before, but having a family that we're all musicians and all play together, that seems to be a natural precursor for people naturally doing group stuff. I was trained very much traditionally individually, and so I've gone on and taught mainly like that. So that's an interesting thing I'm picking up, I guess, in how people have come to group teaching.
I'd never thought about that, really, that correlation.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll have to give that some thought.
It's become more and more clear to me that seems to be the case because, as you've said, as you were young, you were growing up, you had this community experience as a musician. Mm-hmm. And for example, Laura, who is on a recent podcast, she also grew up in a studio which had group classes, so she wanted to build the same community in her studio. So I definitely think there's a correlation.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so what are some of the things that set you apart in your studio from the other people around you?
Well, I think the main thing is the way that I schedule my teaching. Okay. Each of my students have a private lesson, a group lesson, which we call the ensemble class,
okay,
and a lab, time in the keyboard lab, every week.
Okay.
So my students are in the studio for 90 minutes every week. It's scheduled in such a way that they come and do all 90 minutes together at one time because I found that parents just are not willing to drive to the studio twice a week. They'll do it for sports. They'll do it for dance. I cannot.
That's right. Three or 4 swimming lessons a week is fine.
Right, but not piano. Yeah. And so I capitulated and decided not to try to force the idea of come once for private, come once for group, and instead we do it all together. Each child just comes one day. Okay. And I think that's probably the most unique thing about my studio. I don't know of anybody else who teaches like that. I know teachers who, will do group classes like once a month or in the summer, or who have a large enough studio that they can do group instruction. But I don't know anybody who schedules it and does it quite the way I do. So I would say that's pretty unique. And for the most part, that's why people come to my studio. Generally, they know somebody who's studying at my studio, and their kids like the group class, and so they sign up, because of that. And I don't teach very many students where I only teach private lessons because I figure there's a lot of really fabulous private instructors in this town. And so if they're looking for what I do uniquely, then we're a good fit. If they're looking just for I want a half-hour private lesson or a 45-minute private lesson, I tend to refer them elsewhere where they can get, that different experience. So I would say that's the most unique thing about my studio is just how it's scheduled.
Absolutely.
And that makes everything else possible. I couldn't do the things I do without the schedule that I have.
Okay. Yeah, certainly I haven't heard of anything. The closest I've heard is Michelle Sizzler, who I interviewed, and she just has a crossover time. So a student comes for 45 and 45, they cross over for half an hour. But yours, so how does the actual scheduling work for your guys? They're there for a 90-minute block, each student?
Most of them, yes.
And there's some overlap between them as they go.
Absolutely.
So you better give us an outline of a little Johnny or someone who, what does he do when he arrives?
Okay, so if we have, let's pretend that we have a family of 2 students, brother and sister. They would come together, and we'll call them Sarah and John, since you said Johnny.
Yep.
So Sarah and John would come together. And when they got to the studio, one would sit down with me and have their 30-minute private lesson. And the other student would go back into the lab and work on the Clavinova or the iPad or the computer, something, do their lab time. And then after 30 minutes, they switch places.
Mm-hmm.
So John would come have his private lesson and Sarah would go do the lab. And then, so that's the first hour of their time. And then another set of students would come. It's usually kids who carpool together or siblings. I have a lot of siblings.
Right.
So then the next 2 kids would come. So at that point, I'd have 2 families, 4 kids there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do our ensemble class. And in that class is when we do all of the group activities. And you notice that they're siblings, so they're not necessarily the same. They're not necessarily the same age. They're not necessarily the same ability level, but we work with that. So then we have that 30-minute period where all 4 of the kids are there, and then the first 2 kids will go home, and the second 2 kids will do their their private lesson and lab.
Okay, and then the process will start again with the next. Yes, okay. Wow.
So some days I teach 2 blocks, and it's like a 5-hour teaching day because each block is 2.5 hours.
Yep.
And some days I don't. I only teach 1 and then maybe a private student or 2 or something.
Right.
But it took a while before I figured out a way to schedule it the way I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that everybody was in the studio doing everything I wanted them to do, but they only had to come once a week.
Got it. And so you're teaching 30 minutes individual, and then the group for half an hour?
Yes.
And then 30 minutes, and then you either do it again or you have a break?
Yes.
Yeah, probably have a break. Yeah, wow. Okay. I love it. It's that's why I enjoy interviewing people to share these ideas, because it's just another creative way of scheduling. I think it's great. And it's obviously having great success for you. How many, I imagine there's a limit to the number of students you can have. Do you have other teachers working for you? Is it just you? And about how many students do you see each week?
It's just me. And in my group, like the overlapping classes, I would say there's probably maybe around 36 students, most of whom are siblings.
Yep.
So I'm really careful about that because of zoning laws, frankly.
Zoning laws?
Yeah, we have to be careful about how many students we can have at one time. And
in a property.
Right, because it's my home, it's a home studio.
Yep.
I don't have the storefront type studio. And so I'm really careful about how I schedule so that I'm within my property, my county zoning laws.
Yeah.
But it is just me right now. I've thought about opening a studio somewhere, but I'm not sure. Right now my focus is on my family.
Yeah, sure.
I teach as much as I need to support my family, but then I have to be careful to balance my family time.
Absolutely.
But I have thought about it. I've thought about having people work with me. But at this point, no, it's just me. And I am limited because I'm limited by when school gets out and when everybody wants to go to bed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and when you want to have some time with your family too.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's about 36. And then I have a few teenagers and adults. I have a couple of students that I teach only the creativity element to. I don't teach, they study with other teachers for their repertoire, their technique, that kind of stuff. Because I'm not a competition teacher. That's not the focus of my studio, but I have a couple of students who that's what they do.
Yep.
But they want the creativity and the ensemble element. So, for example, I have a 10-year-old girl that I teach, and all we do is play duets and improvise and learn how to play from a lead sheet and things like that. That's all we do. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, brilliant. I would love that. That's the kind of teaching I love doing. So isn't that great?
I don't have to do the rest of it. I don't have to worry about her technique or put her in competition. So I have a handful of those students as well.
That's great. Well, let's talk about that creativity a little bit later. I just want to cover a couple more things with regard to the group. So when the student goes over to do the lab on their own, do you follow a book or curriculum or a set of apps? What do you do? What do they do?
Really, they do whatever I feel inspired to do that week. I would like to be more organized. I've looked at Michelle Sisler's materials. The problem is she doesn't have one out yet. I don't remember what she calls it, double-click curriculum for the methods I teach from.
Right.
So
What methods do you teach from, out of interest?
Music tree, Celebrate Piano, Piano Safari.
Great,
are my biggest three. And then I also use Jennifer Eklund's Piano Pronto, but not so much as a method, more as a resource. But I use it a lot.
Have you chosen those, for example, Safari and Tree, Piano Tree, is that right?
Music Tree,
sorry. Have you chosen them? I'm not that familiar with them, but I've heard about them. Are they quite well connected with your take on improvising and creativity? Or not necessarily?
To a point, although it's ironic, I didn't use those elements of them.
Right.
Before I started using some other materials, I felt a little intimidated by them and then frankly wasn't sure what the point was.
Right.
Because I didn't grow up improvising and being creative. I was a sight reader. And so that was all just kind of odd, playing by ear, improvising. I didn't know what to do with that, so I would skip those parts. It's really embarrassing, but it's true. But now I really see the value in them. I chose them because of their reading. Music Tree, I love the way it's not positional, and I love the way kids learn to read using Music Tree, and Celebrate Piano is multi-key. That was my objective in choosing that. Right. And Piano Safari is new, and I just love it. It's so eclectic. It's got everything all in one book, and I really love that. So that's why I chose those. Sure.
So you said you weren't brought up improvising and being creative. How did you get the skills to teach it?
About 6-7 years ago, one of my colleagues and friends, Jennifer Fox.
I know Jennifer. Jennifer. Yeah, she's great.
She's a dear friend of mine. She told me about Forrest Kinney's pattern play books. And I bought them at a conference and promptly didn't use them because I didn't get them. And so then the next year, our local association was in charge of the state conference. And we brought Forrest Kinney in as our kind of keynote guy. And I was just fascinated by how he teaches, by the fact that he doesn't teach note reading right off the bat, and that he does so much with ear and improvisation and arranging at the beginning. And so I spent the whole conference following him around.
Yep.
And picking his brain. I also made arrangements for him to come to Tucson a day early. And he did a master class in my studio with my students.
Oh, brilliant.
So I was able to see what he did with them because I couldn't get it. I couldn't see what the magic was. But I was so intrigued by what he did. So it was really Forrest and pattern play that started the journey.
Yeah.
And then I also attended a workshop at SMU in Texas a couple summers ago with Forrest and Bradley Sowash and Lee Levis. and they have so many great ideas.
What a crew. Yeah, they're great.
So that was really a game changer for me.
Yeah.
Because I discovered that I could improvise, and that it was magical and it was fun.
Yeah.
And that my students loved it. So I have to give the credit to Forrest.
Well, and credit to you for being to going out and seeking something new, and obviously trying it, and probably having some failures along the way. That's kind of part of it, and just trying to teach differently. That's my whole thing. That's what I love. So good on you. Forrest is great. I like Forrest. And we met at the NCKP conference, and I followed him around a bit too, and just watching him, he is so good. So I look forward to having him on the podcast. He's a hard man to catch, but no, that's really, really good to hear. And the pattern play books, we'll put a link to them in the show notes. They are a great resource. And while it's great to watch someone in action doing it, you can pick it up slowly, and I'm sure there'd be some YouTube clips about it or something.
Mm-hmm. He has some YouTube videos. And
so just before we finish off on the lab, I didn't quite really get to the end of that question. Can you give us an example? You say it kind of goes with what you feel like doing, but if they're off in the room or next door to you on their own, I assume with headphones on, doing their own kind of thing, I assume you can't just say, I'll try this app for a bit. There must be some structure to it.
There is. The younger students usually do 10 to 15 minutes of Piano Maestro.
Great, yep.
Because I love that app, and they can do that on their own.
Yep.
And they enjoy that. And then the older students, sometimes they'll be using my Yamaha keyboards. I'll give them an assignment like, take this chord progression, record a style track on the Clavinova or one of my other Yamaha keyboards, and then improvise your own melody to it. So they'll have something concrete to do. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes we'll do, I'll have them watch a YouTube video and then fill out a small worksheet about it. Right now, the thing that's going on in the studio that's hilarious is I have this group of kids that are all trying to beat each other at the music flash class app.
Oh yeah, I've got that.
On the key signatures.
Right.
And there's this raging rivalry. So the moment I can't get some of them to do anything else.
Right.
Because all they want to do is beat the high score on the scoreboard.
Music flash class. Is that interesting? I haven't used flash class for key signatures as much as just basic note drilling. Mm-hmm. So I should explore the key signatures.
It's great. I have kids that are up to doing the score right now is 60 in 2 minutes. They can name 60 key signatures correctly in 2 minutes.
That's great. I'm making a note to remind myself.
There's a lot of rivalry. That's I would say about a quarter to a third of my studio, that's all they're doing right now.
Right.
And in a few weeks after I make them learn all of the relative minors and make a new board for that, we'll move on to something else. Yeah. So often I'll have a theme for the younger kids and a theme for the older kids. Like we were doing a lot with lead sheets for a while, both in ensemble class and in the lab. And so sometimes their lab assignments would be around that. Mm-hmm. But it is I want to be more structured about it so that they have a specific assignment. A lot of times, really, it is go and try this out. Yep. Let me know what you think. Yeah. Because they enjoy that. They like being the testers.
Yes.
And one of the other apps that I set them loose on quite a bit is, I don't know how to say it actually, Theta Music.
Theta.
Yes.
Theta?
We use that.
Maybe? Yeah.
Theta. I don't know. We use that a lot because they like picking their own ear training games and watching how they move on the scoreboard. And so there's a couple of apps.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. I haven't used that one, so I'll check that one out. That's kind of oral training?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yes, and they really like that. And they'll also use Note Flight a lot.
Okay. And that's a notation program, isn't it? Yeah.
So those are the kind of go-to ones that if I don't have a different nefarious plan for the day, then those are things they always have an ongoing assignment in.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yeah, cool. Have you used in Flash class, have you used the hot potato feature with your groups?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that one is a very popular
Yeah.
one.
So
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, investigate it. You pretty much have to note name or key signature name and pass it to the phone to the next person, and it slowly, this kind of sound goes, and you don't want to be holding it when the bomb goes off. It's great fun.
It's very popular.
Yeah. It's great. All right, so let's talk about the group section. So you've got 4 kids, often siblings, for 30 minutes, different ages, varied ability. Where do you start? Do you have a curriculum for that one? Or again, do you obviously plan what you're going to do, but you make it up as you go, week to week, month to month sort of thing?
Really, I pick a theme. And then I focus on that with all of the groups. Lesson planning would be a nightmare if I had to plan for every single group. Mm-hmm. So in general, I mean, they're multi-age, multi-level anyway. So they're all that way. So I just roughly plan for all my classes at once.
Okay.
So for example, recently we did all these activities with lead sheets. And everything was tied to either chords or lead sheets or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what I'm writing the blog article about, because it's really fascinating when you pick a theme, how much you can do with it. So for example, we were working with lead sheets. So we learned what a lead sheet was, and the youngest students would play just the root of the chord. Mm-hmm. If the lead sheet said to play a G, they would play just a G. And then the more advanced students would play like an open fifth, if their hands weren't ready to play the center note of the triad. And then, it progresses from there. So everybody could do the lead sheet on their own level. Some of the kids were playing all of the triads in root positions. Some were adding the sevenths. Some were playing them in a cadence type pattern. So it just really depended on the student. They took whatever they knew from theory and applied it. Some kids could play the lead sheet with both hands themselves. Some would play it as a duet. Sometimes we would add the rhythm on the clavinova, add the rhythm, the styles. I don't know if you're familiar with how those keyboards work, where it's like a band hiding in your keyboard.
Does that have the setting where if you press down low, if you press a C chord shape, it'll do a backing that's in the C chord for as long as you hold it? Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So we used that a lot.
Yep.
And then we took that idea and we took Wendy Stevens from Compose Create, her rhythm cups.
Oh, yeah. All right.
We would do rhythm cups, but then one student would go over to the piano and play the chords from a lead sheet with a style, and that was our backing track.
Right.
They were practicing playing their chords while everybody else was doing rhythm cups. What else did we do with it? We transposed it for the kids that could do that. Oh, and we learned about chord function.
Okay.
We did a lot with chord function, and if we're playing in G, then G is the one chord, like that. And again, on the individual kids' levels.
Sure.
And so I just took that idea, and that's what we did. We're coming to the end of that. I have to come up with another idea.
A new theme. Yeah. How many weeks would that theme have worked for example? I think we did it all of January and February, so about 8 weeks. Great.
And now we're kind of done with it. I get a sense of when the kids are finished, and then we move on. But we also have some standard things that we always do. We always do rhythm cups, at least once a month.
Right.
We always do pattern play.
Yep.
At least twice a month.
These are in the group classes?
Yes.
Yep.
They're kind of standard things. Like this week and 2 weeks ago, we were closed last week, but we've been working on the Japan, Forrest Kinney's Japan improvisation from Pattern Playbook 2.
Right.
And with that, they learned the pentatonic scale, Japanese pentatonic scale. They learned how to transpose it onto different notes than just the 5 white notes. this week we're doing conducting. So they get up there, somebody stands up and conducts us playing the notes of that scale, ascending and descending, with fermatas on the notes. So they get to be in control.
Right.
And so they're all learning conducting, and they all loved that. Was a big hit. So I think we might do conducting next, because then we can do meter but really I try to find something where I can integrate a bunch of different activities where kids can learn at their own levels. And take what they know and learn something new. And I find that they do that all the time. The little ones are always watching the big ones because they want to do what they did. So if I say play a single note for their chord, they're watching their brother or sister to see, wait, what are they doing? Because I can do that too.
Sure, yeah.
And the older kids are wanting to show off their awesome skills. That's what I do with my themes, is try to find something that will roughly tie together and give us lots of activities. So like rhythm cups, we can do meter and conducting. Improvisation, we can do meter and conducting.
Yeah.
There's just lots of, and that might be the next one, actually.
Yeah, okay. You're thinking on your toes, but I like it.
I am thinking on my toes.
If it's successful, you can say, oh yeah, Tim had a part in this. No, I'm kidding. How many keyboards do you have in your room? Is it 4? Or do they play on 1 or 2, or what happens?
In my main teaching area, I have my 6.5-foot Kawai, and it's about 20 years old, so it doesn't match at all the 80-year-old Chickering that sits next to it.
Okay.
But it gives us two keyboards, and then I also have my Clavinova in here, so I have 3 different keyboards we can use.
Yeah.
And then in my lab, I have 4 Yamaha keyboards. They're not Clavinovas, they're DGX 640s, I think.
Okay.
They're more portable, so we can haul them off to the park or the library or somewhere to play where they don't have a piano, and where they certainly don't have 2 or 3 if I want more than 1.
Yeah, sure. So do you use the lab room for the group sometimes?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But otherwise there'd be generally just be one person in there doing his or her lab.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Or sometimes too, I have a couple of families where I teach 3 of the children.
Okay.
So then I have 3 of them here at a time.
Right.
So they're all over the place, but
yeah.
Typically there's 1 in the lab, 1 with me, and during the ensemble class we're all together.
Okay. So just going back a step, did you originally start teaching more traditionally one-on-one and then migrate to this?
I started teaching just regular half-hour private lessons 23 years ago or so.
Okay.
And I started teaching these ensemble-type classes, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I had really wanted to incorporate the group lesson, but I just could not get people to come to the studio twice a week.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something more often than once a month or once every couple of months. And so I started teaching the overlapping classes, but what I did was I grouped them by age and level.
Okay.
And that was a scheduling nightmare. And it was a nightmare for parents because I teach so many sibling groups and parents were having to drive. And most of my parents drive 15, 20 minutes to get to me. Mm-hmm. So it was tough. And after 2 or 3 years of doing that, I went back to teaching like Michelle does with the overlap. You do the 45s and overlap them.
Yep.
Because I was just so tired of trying to figure out how to schedule these classes. Yep. And then by the end of the 9 months, they all wouldn't be in the same place anyway.
Yeah,
because this one wouldn't practice and this one would practice more. And so I just decided, forget it. So I threw the whole plan out the window, and for 2 years, 1 or 2 years, I taught where I would schedule kids back to back.
Okay.
And overlap their time. But it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. So
what was it that you wanted it to do?
Well, just to have more kids together and to just have that time.
Yeah.
That time with 4 kids at once. So a couple of summers ago, I had a little pilot program where I asked people to come and experiment with this idea of doing multi-age, multi-level activities. I wanted to see if it would work before I committed myself.
Great plan. Really good plan. Testing it, yeah.
I discovered some things that I thought would work were an absolute disaster.
Yep.
And some things that I didn't think would worked like a charm.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and 2 years ago, I reinstated the 90-minute class. But the major change I made was the fact that siblings could come together, and I didn't really care if the kids were at the same level. I mean, there's a couple of classes where they are, just coincidentally.
Yep.
But I don't even try. It's really what day can you come, and this is who you'll be with.
Right.
And so it made scheduling so much easier.
Yep.
And it's really been neat to see the things that the kids learn by learning kind of in a Montessori environment.
Yep.
Where they just explore at their own level.
Yep.
The older ones teach and the younger ones watch. One of them, I asked my students for my blog article what they like about ensemble class. And one of my 6-year-olds said, I like that people help me. And I thought that was really cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she's the youngest in the group, and somebody's always helping her.
She's got 3 big brothers and sisters, effectively, in that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the mentoring and leadership aspect for the older kids, I thought would be great. And
it is.
They'd relish it. Yeah.
So I do try to balance it. I shouldn't say I don't pay any attention. I try to avoid having, say, 1 more advanced student and 3 brand new beginners.
Yeah.
Or a bunch of more advanced kids and 1 right off the block beginner, because that doesn't work as well. It works better when they really vary in level.
Yeah. So you almost relish the variance in their playing. I mean, it's be fine. You've said there's people at the same, but it's totally fine having various ability.
Right.
Yeah. And so Laura, who is in this other podcast, I'm not exactly sure which one it will be, but the listeners will have watched it, I think, by the time we see you. So she does the classes on a Sunday, once or twice a term, so every 4 weeks sort of thing. And she does stream it, but you can, because they're coming in especially for it. I can see how that just doesn't work for your particular method of teaching, and you've come up with a solution. I love the fact that you tested it over summer. I think that is just brilliant, really sensible.
I was very nervous about it.
Yeah.
And I needed to know that I could look parents in the eye and say, this will work.
Yeah.
And not be bluffing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's a reminder to all of us that, you don't have to jump. You don't have to go and buy 10 keyboards and stop all your current lessons and completely upend all your teaching. Try out a little idea and see how it works for you, and see what works for the students too. I think it's great. I really, really love that you've shared this kind of idea with us, because it's completely different, very creative.
Well, thank you.
Now, I was going to ask you about the parents. Did you have them on side at the start? Did you lose a few when you said, sorry, you got to pay for 90 minutes instead of 30 now, sort of thing?
No, because I was a big chicken when I first did it.
Right.
I set my tuition the way I wanted it to be, and then I gave all of my existing parents an enormous discount. I think it was something along the lines of, oh heavens, I don't think their tuition went up but by like $5 a month. I actually really seriously undercut myself, but I was so nervous and I didn't have the confidence. I knew Jennifer would tell me and others would tell me, just charge what you feel like you're worth. People will come, and I didn't believe them. I thought, no, they won't.
Yeah.
And so, especially because a lot of my students are also from my faith, my religion. They're referrals from church, and
Yep.
And they're not known for wanting to spend lots and lots of money. And so I was very apprehensive. So when I first started it 6 or 7 years ago, I said, any new students, this is your price. But everybody else, I really think it was like a 25% discount. It was huge.
Right. Okay.
And I just did that. And then when I stopped, of course, then it ended. So when I came back to it 2 years ago, I actually priced myself more fairly.
Okay.
But at that point, I had a number of students who had done the ensemble classes before I stopped doing it and missed it. So they wanted to do it.
Yep.
I've interviewed my parents a few times over the years, over the last 2 years, I guess, since I've only been doing it again for these last 2 years, just to keep a sense of the pulse. Like, is this working? Is it too long? And for some really young kids, honestly, it can be a little too long, even with changing the activities up. But the parents that I've talked to about it have said, this is what we want. It works. We'll make it work. They don't want to come to the studio twice a week.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of really little kids that do it. My average beginner is 7 or 8.
Yep.
So I have this handful of little kids, but usually the moms are in the studio, and if the kids get tired or fussy, they'll do something with them. And so the parents have been really supportive. I think they hear how much the kids enjoy it, and if they're just dropping off their kids, they have an hour and a half to go run errands.
Yeah, that's it. I'd love it. So I don't imagine you would charge 3 times the 30-minute rate.
No.
Do you have a kind of formula for working out, for other people that might want to consider this idea or something similar? Do you have a basic formula for it?
Roughly, yes. I charge a little bit more for the ensemble class than my hourly rate. I think it's maybe 25 or 30% more.
Okay. That's for the half-hour bit in the middle?
Yes.
Yep.
And then really I charge virtually nothing for the lab.
Okay, yep.
Partly because it's not as structured as I would like it to be.
Yep.
And so I feel like since it's more of an experimental thing for the kids than you must do this, now go do this, I don't put as much planning time into it. Like I described, it's generally more of a global, okay, go do Piano Maestro and then choose an ear training. Here's
some apps you can do this with, yeah.
And I only have on the studio iPads what the kids can use. So if they want to do a different app, okay, have at it. So I'm not as structured about that, so I don't charge a whole lot for that element of it. And then, of course, the half hour is charged at my private teaching rate.
Got it.
So it roughly works out. What does it roughly? I don't even know what it works out to because I charge by the term.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To get a calculator and muddle out what the figure would actually be. But I think I think it's roughly my 90-minute students pay about the same as my 45-minute private students.
Okay.
Roughly. I think they pay a little less. I think it's about $10 a month less.
Okay. All right, that's a good figure.
45-minute privates.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's good.
And if anybody's curious about my rates, they're all on my website.
Okay, cool.
You can find them, and if you want to try to dissect the magic behind them. But I feel like if, for example, the going rate for half-hour private lessons in my city is $100, which I don't really know what it is, but these are nice round numbers. If it's $100 and I charge $150 for my 90-minute class, I'm charging time and a half. They're getting 3 times the time in the studio. I haven't been comfortable going higher than that, honestly, because I think there is a point at which people will say that's more than it's worth.
Yep.
So that, to me, that's been kind of my figure. So about 1% more than a 30-minute private lesson.
No, it's great. I think it's good to talk about this, and I appreciate your honesty about the whole thing too. It's great because it is pricing is one of those tricky things. It's easy to know how much you should charge an hour. Well, actually, no, it's not even that. I did a survey of all my readers at the start of the year, and the range was enormous for hourly equivalents. Now, granted, people are in different states and different parts of the world, and your area will decide really what people are prepared to charge and who's down the road charging $5 an hour and stuff like that. But it's good to talk over these things so we do have an idea of what we're worth. And I think we often undersell ourselves as piano teachers, and we're afraid of making money.
I'm not afraid of making money.
Good. Okay.
I'm afraid of being too expensive. That's my fear. And I do know that, like, when I price my summer activities, I probably don't price them high enough. When I've looked at what some of my colleagues in different parts of the country do. For example, I know one colleague who prices her summer programs at, I think, like a 4, maybe a 6, I'm trying to remember. It's like 4 or 6 hour camp, I think. And it's the same as 2 months of private lessons.
Right.
Mine are way less expensive than that.
Okay.
Because when I price my summer programs, I'm trying to attract community kids as well.
Sure.
And so I have to look at what's similar, like what does the dance camp charge? What does the theater camp charge? If I price my small group activities at the rates that are my private lesson rates, like some of my colleagues do, I wouldn't get the community kids, and I want to attract those kids. I want people to know about my studio and what's going on. So again, I probably underpriced myself in the summer comparatively, but it fits the need that I want to fit, and it works.
Great. That's good.
But when you said in one of your emails, you can make more teaching groups, I can earn a little more, but the way I price it, I don't earn like maybe what a Yamaha school would do, or somebody where they're just charging slightly less than private instruction.
Sure.
I just, that's not my business model.
Yeah.
So
no,
I find that kind of ironic. I don't make a ton more because I teach. I'll just be honest. I make a little more.
Good. It's good. Honesty is great. And I was going to ask you if it had a financial impact. It sounds like perhaps it's had more of a marketing impact on your studio.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think my students really enjoy it. I don't lose a lot of students because they stop taking piano. I lose a lot of students because they move across the country or across the world. I have students in Japan right now, in the Netherlands, that to be my students, but they moved. So I have found my retention is pretty high. I think because of that opportunity to interact with other musicians, they make friends, and they value those friendships. So, or they're already friends and they come to the studio
and they have fun together anyway.
Yes.
There's a lot to be said for that community. Literally is the word that you build. Yeah. So,
and I think the ensemble classes build community, and the summer programs build community. The earning is a little higher with the groups because I factor in the prep time.
Right.
But then you have to factor in the prep time. So your hourly rate probably is about So
I love it. All right. So look, let's talk about some of the other great things you're doing, because we've talked about groups. Obviously, that's a very special part of how you schedule. We've touched on some of the creativity aspects. Before we go a little bit deeper into improvising and things like that, because I know that's something that teachers love hearing about and getting ideas about. I definitely do. Are there any other wacky things that you do that set you apart? Or are they the main two things? And they're fantastic. Like, it doesn't matter if there's no more. This is totally fine.
I would say that
I don't want to miss anything, Lynette.
One of the things I do that I have found tremendously successful and that I love doing is that each summer I offer a beginning piano camp. And it's a 2-week camp. The kids come. These might be kids that are transferring from another studio but are pretty beginner level, or brand new beginner kids. They come for 15 hours over 2 weeks. Really, they can only handle 2.5 hours, and then their brains are stuffed and they have to go home. But they, in that 15 hours, they learn how to read intervallically on the staff. They learn the 4 beginning guide notes in music tree, which are F, G, and C, middle C. They learn how to improvise. They learn solfege. So they go right into private lessons knowing solfege, which I use heavily in my teaching, because it helps them transpose. I'm all about solfege because you can transpose.
Okay.
We use movable do, so that do is your home note. It's very effective for what I want it to do. And they learn rhythm, like through 16th notes, dotted rhythms. They sing pieces in every mode, because I'm also a Music Together teacher, and Music Together has tons of modal pieces, and I borrow them from my camps. And what else do they do? Oh, they do play the piano some.
Right.
Honestly, we don't play a ton, because since it's a camp, their posture is terrible. Their hand position is awful. We're not focusing on that as much. So I don't have them play as much, because I don't want to build a lot of bad habits.
Sure. Yeah.
But we do a lot of improvisation, and that's where we work on technique, because I'll say, do this with your hand and land on the key like this. And so we get some of that. What else do we do? We do a bunch. So they come into private lessons basically with about a semester's worth of an average beginner who, practices a little. I don't teach. My students are very much community kids. They're bright, they're creative, but piano is only an aspect of their life. So if you think of a very average piano student and what they would learn in a semester, that's about what they learned in the camp.
Okay.
So then they go into private lessons and into their ensemble classes with a lot of background. And I find that that's really effective. I don't really like starting students mid-year who are brand new beginners, because they don't know all that stuff. And you have to cram it into them in 30 minutes. Yeah. And it's not a game, and it's not fun, and it's not with 6 other kids. And
whatever. It takes a long time to absorb all that. So do you actually have a waiting list for students, so students can only start with a summer camp?
Oh, usually, yes, because usually I just don't have any openings.
Sure.
If it's a transfer student and they already know some stuff, then I'll start them. But most times I'll encourage families to wait.
Okay.
Besides, it's a fantastic deal financially. Because you're not paying for 5 months of private lessons, you're paying for a 2-week camp, which is not the same cost.
Sure, got it.
So that is something else unique I do. And then I do summer camps and workshops in the summer. I think a lot of teachers do that, but I do that because I have a lot of students that don't want to take all summer.
Okay.
But I want
take
them
off
to take
all summer, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they want to take off, and I don't want them to.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yep, I'm with you.
And so in the summer, they can do private lessons, or they can trade their private lessons for an ensemble class or a workshop. A workshop or a camp. So it keeps everybody enrolled and moving along. But it's like this summer, for example, we're doing something with the organ. We're going to go to a nearby church and learn how to play the pipe organ, because I think it will be fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It keeps them coming, but it's also interesting and engaging.
It's great. So,
I
love hearing you say as a teacher, because I think it's fun. I think it's great. I do the things that I do in my classes. I muck around with chord progressions. I listen to things on YouTube and try and play it with students because it's fun. And if I like doing it, they're gonna. Well, chances are they're hopefully going to enjoy it too.
Well, and if I'm not having fun, no one's going to have fun.
Absolutely right. And unfortunately, if you teach the same way over and over the same pieces and things, it becomes very difficult to have fun. So that's why I'm all about these kind of new ideas. So. In fact, next month is all about summer camp. So April is summer camp month on my blog.
Oh, okay.
So I might have to give you a nudge and see if you can jot down some ideas for that one as well. Because you got so many great ideas. We can't pack them all in. And we're running out of time already, I'm sure. Just on solfege, this is, for those who aren't so familiar, this is the Kadai methodology. I think I'm right in saying.
Yes.
Can you give us like a 2-minute why teachers should maybe look up and read and learn a bit more about this, how it impacts students for you?
Like I said, I use it primarily for ear training and transposing. Because when students first come into my studio, I teach them pentascales and how to sing them. Do, re, mi, fa, so, like that. Mm-hmm. And then we learn that you can do that anywhere on the piano. And then they learn that when you play hot cross buns, what you're playing is mi, re, do, and how, again, you can do that anywhere on the piano. And then we just play with that. Right now I have a student who's picking out by ear Edelweiss, and then she'll add the chords. She'll figure those out by ear. And then we'll play around with how we can modify the chords with using secondary triads in place of primary triads. And then she'll transpose it. And you can transpose from the staff, but I try to do things away from the staff as well. Okay. I try to help my kids see that that's one way of communicating music. But if you know the solfege for a fairly relatively simple piece of music, a folk song, some of the things on the radio have 3 notes in them anyway, you can transpose. And I tell my students, they're learning fabulous theory, but I tell my students it's a parlor trick. You can say, look, I can play this here, and I can play it here too. Yeah. Lots of black notes, I can play it there. And they enjoy that. But they're learning all this theory at the same time. Yeah. But I use it as a tool for understanding do is home. When we're in major, do is home. Everything goes home to do. It's an ear training tool too. And then we use it with more advanced kids for modes. Yep. So I find it very useful. So I want them all to know it, and I make them all learn it, and then we use it when I think it's a good idea.
That's great. I know aspects of Kodály, but I don't use that in my teaching at the moment, and I want to learn more about it. So I'm actually going to try and get someone who knows Kodály and piano, and get them on here to talk about just that, because I think there's so much in all these great methods that are out there, or maybe not methods, they're more perspectives or whatever you'd call it, that you can pick and choose from and just use what suits your teaching, which sounds like exactly what you do.
Well, and I don't have any Kodály training. I just stole the idea because it works. Yeah. It worked for before kids can notate jingle bells, for example. They write out jingle bells with solfege. So they'll write me, 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 so, do, re, mi. And then they can play that in any key. And then as they learn to write on the staff, they can take that solfege and put it on the staff. And it's tremendously powerful. But I don't know what they do with it in Kodály. I just borrowed the idea.
It's great.
I'll have to watch the podcast.
That's right. See if you're getting in trouble for it.
Probably.
All right. Well, look, we're gonna start kind of wrapping up, but I just wanted to go back to improvising and the kind of creative aspects. We talked about pattern play and some of Forrest Kinney's fantastic ideas. But do you have, off the top of your head, a couple of your favourite creative little ideas that you use with students, or improvising ideas?
One of the ones that I use with my students right off and we use forever is the heart and soul chords.
C, A minor, F, G. Yep.
Yes. It's funny because kids don't know heart and soul anymore.
No.
I have to teach it to them. Like, don't your friends play this? No. Oh. Well, they used to. But we use those all the time because it's great for improvisation. Somebody plays the chords down at the bottom, maybe in a chord pattern on the piano, maybe with the clavinova style with the band when you press on the chord, and then you just improvise.
Do you use a pentatonic scale, or just any white note?
Any white note usually is what I'll tell them. Play any white note. It should sound good. One of Forrest Kinney's first improvisations, World Peace, it's in book 1. It's actually the heart and soul chords, just as an open fifth and in F sharp.
Right.
So, and then you improvise on black
On the
notes.
black keys, yeah.
It's pretty fun when the kids figure that out. They're like, hey, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. So we use that a lot.
Yeah.
And then we play with, okay, well, we talk about how that shows up in pop music all the time, or modifications, and I'll say, okay, write your own pop song and use some chords, maybe not in that order, but so that's kind of a go-to standby improvisation that we use a lot.
I love it.
I'm trying to think what else. What else do we do? We just use Forrest stuff. And I'm trying to get more familiar with Bradley Sowash's stuff.
Yep.
Because I really like his materials. I just have not used them as much, so I can't speak as he does a lot more with lead sheets, and I'm trying to learn how to do that. I mean, I know how to use lead sheets, but how to help kids, how to play with them so that kids enjoy them.
Sure, yeah. No, it's great.
So,
yeah, he's a good friend of mine, and I'm always happy to recommend his stuff. It is fantastic.
I enjoy Bradley very much.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, what an hour. I've taken all these notes. It's been absolutely brilliant. Just before we go, last question. Have you got 2 or 3 tips for piano teachers who want to become a little more diverse in their studios? What they could try doing, or what they should do, what they should read, or where they should go?
Okay. I think one thing I would say is to think outside the box, not to be afraid to think outside the box. There's lots of traditional teachers and traditional students, and there's room for them. But I also think that there's lots of kids that we will lose if they're not interested in a traditional evaluation, competition type music education. And so I think it's helpful to think outside the box. What could I do that will draw kids in and still give them an excellent education? I don't think you should forego good technique or classical music or things, but so I really like Philip Johnston's book, The Dynamic Studio. That one I read over and over again, because every time I read it, I feel completely overwhelmed.
Yep.
I have to read it and take one idea, because otherwise I just am overwhelmed. So I think you have to think outside the box, but then you have to also avoid the Pinterest syndrome, where you think you have to do everything. Because Leela does this, and Jennifer does this, and Bradley does this, and Forrest does this, and Lynette does this, and Tim does this, and then you burn out because you tried to do so much at once. So I think outside the box, bounce some ideas off people, and then try one thing. And I think getting support is really important. I find my Facebook community, which used to be my Yahoo email list community, those have died, because it's all moved to Facebook. But this kind of stuff, where you connect with other people and find out what works, is so powerful.
And that's one of the reasons that I put together my community, the Inner Circle, as well. Just, because it's sharing of ideas. That's where it happens. And if you get enough people with your kind of thinking and that kind of outside the box ideas together, you're going to absorb new ideas, which is the whole point. Yeah. Right. But great.
I think it's just so important not to, because I'm a person who will try to do everything.
Oh, that is such good advice. Such good advice.
Just do one.
Yeah. One idea.
Try one thing.
Yeah. Try the heart and soul. See how it goes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then see what happens and go to your mentors, because truly, I love conferences. I love going to national conferences. I do, because I get to meet people in real life. But I have my mentors that when I feel stuck, I read their blogs or I message them. I've met them face to face, so I feel comfortable saying, Leela, what do you do?
Yeah.
Or Charlene Chelsea is another. What do you do? And I think it's really important to build that community like you're doing for yourself, so that you have people to go to.
Yeah. Well, I reckon I don't need to say anything else. That was about the best summary I've ever heard. I just love thinking outside the box. It was just brilliant.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. let's hope we can all absorb just one thing from today's podcast with you, because you've given us lots and lots of things. Don't get overwhelmed, everyone, okay? Lynette, thank you so very much for your time today. It has been fantastic. I look forward to catching up with you, hopefully live soon at a conference in the future.
Yes, NCKP next year.
That's it. We're all going to be there.
Yes. All right.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.